Hello and welcome to the NFL Free Agency Day 4 recap here on Dynasty Pros. I'm Justin Taylor. You can find me at JT Orange on Twitter. I am joined by Sam. Sam, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to be here, man. We had a fun little day, so hopefully we can cover some of the news that happened.
Yeah, a little bit slower today than it's been the last couple days, but still some nice signings. I took the day off work, spent all day watching March Madness. It was fantastic. I threw on my old Mizzou hat today. I'm a alum of Missouri and got the big win the Tigers did today. It was a close game, but they ended up pulling it away in the end against Utah State. So I was pretty pumped about that. And then another school I attended, San Diego State University, also got the big win. So it was good. I almost pulled off the trifecta with my all my favorite teams and a huge parlay win. But the Fighting Illini went down against Arkansas. So that was a rough one. I'm from Champaign. University is about 10 minutes from me, so that was the only downfall of the day, or would have been a damn near perfect day for me.
That would have been too good. I was surprised you didn't say that you went to Princeton. You look like a Princeton guy to me, so
Definitely could have never got
definitely
into
not.
Princeton. Not smart enough to get in there. I'll tell. I got recruited by the University of Chicago to play football out of high school, and I went on a recruiting trip. And they were talking about a bunch of the classes, and I mean, a really high academic school. And I just remember my mom looking at me, and she goes, do you really want to study this hard? Because you're going to have to
Yeah,
study really hard if you go to this school. And I looked at my mom, and she just knows me too well. And I was like, you're right, mom. I don't want to go to a school this
I
hard.
don't
I
think
was
you
like,
do.
there's no way. I was like, nope, I'm good. I'll go to a state school, and we can go sporting events and party and hang out. So, but let's get this show on the road. So the first thing we're going to talk about, just a couple signings or a little bit of news around. So, big one was Nasir Adderley, safety for the Los Angeles Chargers. Not very old at all, but reported today he's going to retire. So, early retirement for him. Two big cuts today was Miles Jack, cut by the Steelers. They're going to save about $8 million on the cap by cutting him. And then Bud Dupree, the ex-Steeler, got cut by the Tennessee Titans today. Those are kind of the three big moves there. And then from there, we're going to get into quarterback. It was a heck of a day for me as we're
Hmm.
talking about quarterbacks. PJ Walker, old Carolina Panthers quarterback, got signed to back up Justin Fields for the Bears. So that's a nice little signing there for the Bears. They got rid of Trevor Simeon, got cut once they signed PJ Walker. And then the big move of the day, I've been talking about it, telling everybody on Twitter. I've been talking about this for 6 months at least. I'm a Colts season ticket holder for about the last 15 years. And I was telling everybody at games this year, I was like, the Colts should sign is Gardner Minshew. I'm like, he just feels like the perfect Colt player. And news popped up this morning that the Colts were talking with him, and I was like, please make it happen. I sent out text to every one of my friends. I'm like, we got to have little Minshew mania in Indy, and he signed a 1-year, $3.5 million deal with the Colts. Now, online, everybody was talking about him immediately being the backup. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think there's a chance that he fights with Sam Ellinger for the starting job, and depending on who the Colts take in the draft, if they do go QB at 4, if someone gets to him, I think this really opens the door for what the Colts could possibly do with that draft pick.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I saw that signing go through, and I'm going to compare it to a situation from last year for those watching to, I think, maybe put in their mind maybe a what we can expect from the weapons of the Colts. But I think it really reminded me of a Jacoby Brissett on the Browns last year, where Brissett played and he played pretty well and well enough to make Amari Cooper a number one wide receiver while he was there. And I could totally see Gardner being the similar way as while he's in there he's going to sling it. And I think it could be okay for the weapons there. And like you said, he's one of those guys where he could hold it down well enough. So if they go Richardson or trade down and go Levis or one of these guys that maybe isn't ready day one, but will be ready by the end of the year, he might be a good one to match up with that.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. We got a Cody here with a comment. Gotta love the jean shorts, and this is also specifically why I think he's gonna fit in Indy is the jean shorts, the Fu Manchu, the mullet. I mean, Indy fans are gonna eat Gardner Minshew up. I'm telling you right now, you're gonna see. I don't care if he starts one game ever for them. You're gonna see a ton of Gardner Minshew jerseys in the stands. No one loves their random players like Colts fans. I tell people all the time that have never been to a Colts game, you go to most NFL stadiums, you're going to see, the quarterback, maybe the top wide receiver, running back. You're going to see, 70% of those jerseys are going to be those guys, not at Colts games. Man, when they had McAfee, when they had Vinatieri, I mean, you saw kickers and punters jerseys everywhere. Brandon Stokely
I was
jersey
I was gonna say Brandon Stokely.
as a third wide receiver, fourth wide receiver. I mean, the Colts fans, I mean, you see O lineman jerseys all the time, Quentin Nelson all over the place. I mean, Colts fans just eat up the random small guys. They love them. They absolutely love them. They're going to love Gardner Minshew. And I know people think, hey, he had his time. He didn't make it. The guy's actually got some pretty decent stats and a pretty decent win-loss record in the NFL. And I just think, even though the Colts were number 4, or had the number 4 pick, were one of the worst teams in the league this last year, ton of injuries. I mean, ton of injuries. I mean, their best player, Jonathan Taylor, JT, missed a majority of the season, was banged up in the games he played. Their best defensive player, Shaq Leonard, played like a game and a half. Quarterback play was just abysmal. And the offensive line was beat up. And they ended up playing a rookie at left tackle who I think has a lot of upside, but is a guy from overseas, is from Europe. He's only played a couple years of football in his entire life. So again, I think this team has a chance to be much better. And if you can even get just competent QB play out of Minshew, they can sure up the offensive line again, and JT gets healthy and they pound the rock. I think Minshew has enough to get it going. And again, they brought in Steichen as offensive as a head coach, offensive coordinator for the Eagles. He knows the system. So you can't. I mean, I just think that helps. Even if Minshew doesn't play, say they take a CJ Stroud and Stroud comes in and starts from day one, Minshew's going to help him in the QB room. He knows the system. He's going to be able to go through it and talk through with him. I just think it's a headsy move by the Colts. I like it a ton.
I think if you're sitting there in a dynasty league and you don't love your QB room and you have a couple fourth round picks laying around, I think Minshew's a great guy to go get. I think a couple of the QBs that have signed in the last 24 hours fit that mold too. I think Jacoby Brissett's another guy, same mold. If you're looking for a guy that might start some games this year, Brissett's one of those guys. Minshew's one of those guys. And you're not going to have to spend 1-3 to go get him. You're going to throw a fourth rounder. Maybe you got to throw 2 fourth rounders at him, but who cares at that point? If you think they might start some games, QBs are the toughest thing to attain in a superflex league. So if a fourth round pick can get you a couple starts and you're a contender, those are the kind of guys you need around.
I absolutely agree with you. I had an offer for Baker Mayfield the day before he did the Bucs signing, and I just told the guy, "Hey, he offered me a third. I traded a third for him last year, and I said I'm piling up every random QB I can because in this league I have Patrick Mahomes, and then my second QB has been just a disaster for like the last 3 or 4 years. So I'm like, I'm taking every guy I can, and I'm going to hold him until I see what happens.
Yep.
And I got Brissett in that league. If I got Sam Howell, and I have a lot of Sam Howell because I like him a ton. I hope he gets a chance to start for the Commanders. Excuse me. But I go out and get Brissett. If I got Howell, I'm going to get Brissett to back him up because he showed last year for Cleveland. If he gets in the game, he can produce. He can put up some decent stats for you. I think their offense is going to be much improved. And he's a guy, as a Colts fan, I didn't think got a fair shake with the Colts.
No.
He actually played pretty solid when he was on the Colts team. Basically, before he got a knee injury in that year he was starting on last second with Luck, when Luck retired out of nowhere, he actually had one of the best QBRs and one of the lowest best TD to interception ratios that season. He hurt his knee and he came back and he just didn't look comfortable, didn't look the same. But I think he had like 11-1 or 11-2 interception TD to interception ratio before that. So he's a solid guy. I think you take a chance on Baker, do something like that. I mean, any of those guys right now, if you need a super flex, why wouldn't you go after that guy and hope that he hits?
Yeah, I mean, those are guys that if you're not trying to spend up, maybe they're attainable. And that's kind of in a super flex league, I feel like that's what it really comes down to is spend up at QB or spend, I don't want to say spend down, but go for the flyers, and it's the whole middle that I think you need to dodge. Spend up or spend down. Don't be go and buy in the I mean, like the Mac Jones of the world. Like I don't need to go pay a whatever for Mac Jones. I'd rather double that price and get twice the QB that Mac Jones is, or throw some fourths and a third and get, like you said. I mean, I don't think I'm moving Baker for a third, but if he's your guy, a late second, I get it. I'm not saying I'm going to make that move, but no Baker owners giving him away for a third. That's the issue. So
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, if you can get any of those guys, you're right in the middle. Cody here also jumping in, uh, saying a little bit of Ritter talk here. Is Ritter in the middle? So Ritter's another guy. I mean, I think you got people who think he's going to get a shot. You have people that kind of believe in him, and then you have people that are out on him. I think a lot of people liked him coming out, and then they didn't draft him super high. They skipped over him like 3 or 4 times
yeah,
before the Falcons actually took him in the draft. But he's another guy. Unless they make a crazy move and they go and try to get Lamar, I just don't know what other route they're going to go that isn't starting Ritter. So again, he's a guy you could probably buy fairly cheap because even Ritter owners probably don't think that he's going to start, or if he is he going to be any good? So I'm throwing it. If I could throw out a third or a fourth for any of these guys, and I'm desperate for a second or third QB in Superflex, I think it's worth the gamble to go out there and try to grab these guys.
for sure. I think Ritter, I would consider him. Yeah, he's in the middle, but it's all about price, man. And you see on Twitter all the time the whole not in my league, like you're not, and you're like, of course, like all leagues are different. Um, just because you can get this player for a fourth in your league, obviously that doesn't mean every league it's going to happen. But I'm a big what's the harm in asking kind of guy. I think you never know the deals that get done just by sending that text message or asking, you get that weird offer and you go, would you throw in a second? Would you throw in a third? Like, as long as you're nice about it, the worst someone can say is no. So,
Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe package a deal with some of these guys. Maybe somebody won't trade you straight up for a draft pick, but maybe you could figure out some kind of package to make the move. Thing I keep thinking about Minshew is I had a guy playing a championship game against him last year in Superflex. He had Hurts,
hmm
got injured, played Minshew against me in the championship game, and Minshew went off and beat me. I was the number one team all year, and he actually had a great game where Minshew beat me, and then I turned around and I couldn't believe it. I had Herbert and Trevor Lawrence, and both those guys had a terrible game that week, and I lost. So I think Minshew, is he gonna just light it up?
hmm
No, he's not going to
yeah,
just come in and light up. But I think he's serviceable, and I think he's going to give you good weeks,
yeah,
especially in a super flex. I know I'm going to be targeting him. I'm going to go out and see if I can grab him off the waiver wire if he's out there on somebody, or somebody doesn't need him. They're pretty set at QB. Can I go grab him for something? I'm definitely going to look to pick him up. And again, say they get a Stroud or a Bryce Young, something happens, and they get one of those guys, and they start those guys from the beginning, no harm, no foul.
yeah,
If he
exactly.
doesn't play, you gave it a shot. Um, but I also don't think he's a total throwaway. I mean, I know people think I'm crazy, and when I was saying I was all about him on Twitter, everybody's looking at me like, really, you're all about Minshew? I just think the guy's got something. He's got moxie. He he's plays hard. It seems like guys rally around him. And honestly, when he played for the Eagles, he was pretty solid. And he is actually not bad for the Jags, even when the Jags were terrible.
Mhm.
He wasn't bad for the Jags. So I just think he's a guy in a better spot. Um, get the team around him. I could see them rallying around him, especially if they go Anthony Richardson in the draft. Now, I've been vocal as a Will Levis hater. Not that I hate the guy personally. I just feel like he's got bust written on him. I just don't like his film. I feel like he tries to use his arm to make every play. And I just feel like those guys struggle in the NFL because they think that they can use their arm to get out of trouble. And cornerbacks are too good in the NFL. They just read you and they make those picks. He just feels like a turnover machine waiting to happen, and I just do not want to see the Colts take him. So I feel better they have Minshew if they do take him, but I think Anthony Richards, like a lot of people, needs a couple of years. He just needs a lot of
Yeah.
time. And now I feel like this gives you that little bit of space where now I don't feel so bad. If they go get Anthony Richards, I'm like, oh, okay, I
Mhm.
can deal with that because I'm like, hey, now we get a year or two in the system. Maybe he turns into a high upside, ends up being a Hurts or a Justin Fields type player. But at least you got somebody to play in Minshew, and you're not going to be terrible. And if it all blows up, it all falls apart, and I'm 100% wrong, and Minshew stinks up the joint, it ain't going to be any worse than it was this year. So
No.
again, they can just turn around and get another top 5 pick.
And I think that's one thing that's definitely on my mind is we just went through a year where we watched Matt Ryan and Ellinger throw the ball for that Colts team, and as a guy who really likes Pittman, it was just hard to watch. I think it was hard to watch for everyone watching that offense, just watching Matt Ryan turn into like the Nazis from Raiders of the Lost Ark and just his body just melting down his face in front of our eyes, being like, wow, this guy like used to be good and now he's not. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it was crazy. He had some good games last year, but man, he just turned into a turnover machine. He just started turning the ball over like crazy at the
yeah.
worst possible times. And it just, any good he did got buried in the fact that he just was terrible at turnovers.
Mm.
So here we got the PPR show with SC Romero, our guy Romero. Love that concept about Minshew. Definitely buy right now. Probably on the low with people thinking they get a top 4 QB, and that's where I'm at. I
Hmm.
think most people are going to think he's not really worth picking up because he isn't going to start. They're like, he's a backup,
Yeah.
but
You
is
never
it
know.
is it even a Mitch Trubisky situation where he gets the first half of the season starting?
Yeah.
I did that with Jacoby Brissett last year, and it saved me in a couple leagues getting him for at least the first 8-10 games.
Hmm.
It saved me until like a Sam Darnold came back from injury.
Sometimes in dynasty especially, you need to take the risk right now to get the Minshews of the world for that fourth rounder, because by the time everyone catches on to them being the starter, or I'm going to give you a perfect example. What was it? 3 years ago, McCaffrey's out for the whole year. Mike Davis comes in. If you buy Mike Davis right when he starts playing, you'll get a fine price. But after he shows that he can put some numbers up, that price just tripled. And then all of a sudden you're like, dude, I can't. I remember having this conversation with a friend where he's like, dude, I really need Mike Davis, but the guy's asking a second round pick for him now because the price just starts stacking on each other after a couple good weeks come together. And um, I even think a great idea if you're trying to get a Minshew or a Brissett or you know, just to kind of piggyback off the comment we've thrown up here, Minshew on the Colts, Dalton on the Panthers. If you're drafting the guy on the Panthers and you want the backup or vice versa, it's like, can you trade down and acquire Minshew as the compensation? Can you trade down from 2.8 to 3.6 and get Minshew for free? And in all honesty, is 2.8 really that much better than 3.6? The hit rate on those picks is basically the same, even though we want to think 2.8 is a much better player. You do the deep dive on those statistics, and I tend to believe my strategy is anything after like 2.5 is a coin flip, man. you ain't any more likely to hit at 3-1 than you are at 410. And you can run those numbers every year. Like you get Greg Dulcich in the fourth round and you feel great about it. And you're taking stabs late second, and these guys aren't turning into anything. So move down, get a guy you want, and move on with your life.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm on Minshew here for the Colts if I had to pick between these guys. But I will say this: if I think I've got a high pick and I'm gonna take whoever the Panthers take at one. Say that's who I know I'm gonna say I have the 1-2 or the 1-1,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna take whoever the Panthers take. I'm making a move right now for Dalton so that I get myself covered in case that guy doesn't come in, he doesn't start right away. Dalton again isn't going to show you a lot. He's not going to flash, but he did show last year that in a deeper league he was playable as a super flex. And say if you're in a 14 team league and even some you know 12 team leagues, he's at least playable for you. So it definitely I'm going Minshew over Dalton, but with that idea that if I'm going to take whoever the Panthers take at one, I'm going to try to sneakily get Dalton right now to cover myself. Because again, if the Panthers decide they love AR, they're taking Anthony Richardson. I'm going to take Dalton now, knowing that I'm going to draft Anthony Richardson if they take him, and then try to pair those guys up. Same thing I would do with Minshew. If I think the Colts are going to get him, I'm going to
Yeah.
try to match that up. And if you can make a trade now, great. If you got to wait till after the draft to see who gets them, I don't think that's terrible either. You can
No.
probably still get a decent price on those guys because again, you're going to have some people that think they're going to get. You're just trading a backup where you might get a starter.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Minshew
Another guy that is close to my heart, and we'll bring him. Yep, go ahead.
Oh no, you're good. Yeah, I was just saying I think I'm with you. I would
I was
take
going to say
Minshew.
another guy close to my heart that signed today was Drew.
Oh, I think you must be cutting out, JT, so
Yeah,
you're good.
perfect. Yeah, Minshew over that. So, but Drew Lock re-signed. Oh, so Drew Lock re-signed with Seattle today. So that was a big move for them. They shored up Geno Smith, then shored up Drew Lock, 1 year, $4 million deal. Everyone knows as a Mizzou guy, Drew Lock, a Mizzou guy, I was wanted to see him get a start. I wanted to see him get a chance to start somewhere. I thought the move to Seattle was going to be it. Then they took Geno. Then I was hoping this offseason with kind of the craziness, maybe he would end up in Arizona. Maybe he'd end up in Tampa. Maybe he'd end up one of these spots where he'd get a chance to compete for the starting job. But he is headed back to Seattle. So another year of Drew Lock sitting on my bench and no playing time.
Yeah, I think Drew Lock's a tough one. I mean, he had the arm at one point. In a different world, maybe it's Drew Lock instead of Geno Smith going off last year. That just isn't what happened. It's a bummer to not see him compete, but that's good money, and I still think we're hoping Geno can continue and build upon what he did last year, but there's still no guarantee that it happens. So I guess you never know. I'd rather have him in Seattle than behind Patrick Mahomes. So
Very true. At least he's got some kind of shot there to play at some point. But again, I love Drew Lock. Just wish he got a shot. I just don't think it. I just couldn't believe he didn't get a shot in Denver and everywhere else. But live and learn, move on, and he's going to sit on all my rosters. I just can't cut him, so yeah, I'm just going to hold him for the rest of the time. Let's get into some running back news here. Alexander Madison re-signing with the Vikings, a 2-year deal. James Robinson, a 2-year deal, $8 million with the Patriots. Chase Edmonds leaves Miami and now is headed to the Bucks. Seems like he's the only guy that didn't re-sign in Miami. And then Donta Foreman leaves Carolina, heads to the Bears, a 1-year, $3 million deal. Give me some of your thoughts on these RBs.
I think out of that list, I think the two that really stand out for me are Madison and Foreman. I think the Madison one is tough because he's been one of these players that throughout the years he's been on the Vikings, when Cook misses time, Madison has almost been a smash play besides a couple weeks. He's gone off 6 out of 7 weeks he starts when Dalvin Cook is out. But as time goes on, Dalvin Cook is still there. And so as we continue on, I think more and more people are starting to believe that maybe he just stays on the team. Like, are they really willing to just cut Dalvin Cook without getting any compensation? Probably not. A lot of the dominoes are falling, so maybe it's the teams that still have slots available that are going to start looking for the Dalvin Cooks, the Derrick Henrys, the Ecklers, the trade partner candidates, right? But I tend to think of that money. I don't really see a reason that Madison and Cook can't coexist. We've seen a lot of these running back contracts, and what Madison got is committee money. It's backup money. That's not starter money. Not that the running back starters are getting a lot anyway, but nothing about Madison's contract makes you think, oh, that's the starter moving forwards. I think they just like him and they want to keep him around, and he's been productive when he plays, so they want to do that. And then on the other hand, Foreman, I think we all knew Chicago was going to add someone. We all love Herbert. We want it to just be Herbert. I don't think anyone thought that was going to be the case. Hopefully you capitalized, but I think most players were smart enough not to buy on Herbert as the sole starter. I think Foreman's a great player to have there. He ran well. You know, Foreman had more 100-yard games than David Montgomery, Herbert, Swift, all these players that we think much more highly of. Foreman put up a lot of 100-yard rushing games last year and in the last couple years. So if he finds himself in that goal line role over Herbert, who's to say he can't be a top 24 back? Now, I think a lot of that depends on the efficiency of the Chicago offense, which we're hoping improves. We're hoping it's a little less of the only Justin Fields show and more of the entire offense as a whole. But I think Foreman's a great signing for that money. Someone to take some of the beating off Fields, hopefully. And there's nothing to say that Herbert and Foreman they can't coexist together, right? Now, the worry would be, do they add even another person in the draft in there, which is possible, but at this moment, we don't really have that information to go off.
Yeah, it's for me. I was looking for them to get somebody in the draft, maybe in that third, fourth round. But with this Foreman signing, I feel like that's a little less likely. I think they like Tristan Ebner. Ebner was pretty solid for them last year when he got a little bit of touches. He was a rookie last year out of Baylor. So I could see him being the third guy and then maybe skipping running back in the draft just because of the Foreman. But I like this for the Bears. I mean, the Bears have been obviously the most active team. We knew they would be in free agency because they had the most cap space. But I think it's a nice little addition. Foreman, he's a guy people expected a lot out of coming out of Texas, and then just injury after injury after injury kind of hampered him forever with the Texans, and he kind of bounced around. And then last year, he took advantage. Once CMC got traded to the 49ers, he just turned around and he just kept piling on and putting together good games. So obviously this hurts Herbert a little bit, like you said, but I think it's nice for both these guys. I think it's just an upgrade for the Bears, and I think there's a availability. Both these guys can get some usage. The Bears, they don't want Fields to run as much as he did last year. We know that. There's no way they want him to keep running that much. So hopefully the run game improves all around, and then Fields still piles up his yards without having to run every play and run for his life. So I think that's what they're thinking. But I like Foreman. I think it's a really good signing for the Bears.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, and then like you said on Madison, I agree. Madison, he's familiar. The Vikings know him. They know if they have problems with Cook, injury problems, that he can step in and play right away. I think it was a smart move by both of them. I think Madison realizes if Cook gets hurt, he's immediately going right in. And if you're a fantasy owner, you want Madison on your team. I mean, he's a guy who immediately becomes a high-end RB1 type if Cook goes out. So nothing wrong with that. He's in a familiar system, so you got to like that. The other guys, I mean, James Robinson, I'm really surprised Foreman gets a 1-year deal and James Robinson gets a 2-year, $8 million deal with the Patriots. Like the Patriots needed more running backs. I don't know. I don't know if James Robinson has anything left. I love the guy, old Illinois State guy. Loved him in college here. about 30 minutes from me, but man, he had a couple plays for the Jags last year, and then he kind of fell off a cliff. I just don't think there's anything left. Is he even worth rostering, do you think?
I mean, obviously, I think worth rostering, yes. Am I going out to trade for James Robinson? I don't think I have a care in the world about getting him on my team. I mean, I don't think anyone who was tuned in to how the Patriots looked last year thinks that Stevenson's about to be replaced by James Robinson. Now they needed another body. They had Damian Harris there. He missed a lot of time last year. He was productive enough. Um, but I wouldn't even be surprised to see James Robinson lose touches to Kevin Harris, who looked okay when he came in. I don't really see Robinson as a player that's a step above any of those late draft picks the Patriots added last year. Now, I think the only thing you can hold out hope for is the Deontay Foreman story. Is James Robinson further away from his injury so he actually looks a little better than he did? Now, we've seen it, it happened with Foreman. He had that Achilles and he looks better now than he did 4 years ago. And we're hoping we saw the same thing happen to Cam Akers at the end of last year, where he started to look a little better a year and a half removed from that Achilles injury. But a backup on a smaller deal with an Achilles in his background, I don't see any reason to bet on that. Now, if I own him, I'm not dropping him, but if someone sends me 3-1 for James Robinson, I think I'm just hitting accept and moving on.
What are your feelings on Chase Edmonds? I was out on Chase Edmonds. I didn't have him anywhere. I
I
didn't
don't,
want any
yeah.
part of him in Miami. Do you want him in as a buck? Are you interested in him at all or no?
I don't care at all about I was barely in on Edmonds when people liked him on the Cardinals, and I thought he was overperforming his skill and talent even in that situation when he actually put up a couple good weeks a couple years ago. But then he signs that deal last year to Miami. We all know who that ended. Nothing happened with him last year. And I think at this point, they're just signing a body to put in that backfield. What does it mean for Rashad White? Hopefully, it's good things, but you still got to dodge this NFL draft, man. And that is the scariest thing as a running back owner in Dynasty Fantasy Football is the NFL draft. It's why between the Super Bowl and the NFL draft, do not buy running backs. Do not buy them. Do not buy them. Do not buy them. There is no other advice to give because things can change for them so quickly that be patient, learn how these situations unfold, then go get your running backs. You don't need them right now. You don't have to play them until September. You don't need a starting lineup in April and March and May. You need that starting lineup come September. So be patient and wait to go get your running backs until you know what the backfield looks like.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'm in a startup right now, and we're in the middle of the draft, and running backs are just falling like crazy in this thing. And I'm seeing these guys drop, drop, drop. And I still don't want them. I'm like, I don't want to take any of these guys and not have an idea where they're going to be, if they're going to play, who they're going to get drafted by. I am taking all the young wide receivers. I'm taking IDP guys. I'm out on RB. I took Najee Harris about the third round, end of the third round, and I've just sat on running back ever since. I'm just going to wait around, and if I got to make a trade, later in the year, before the season starts, once I kind of know who's going to play, then that's when I'm going to make a move. I'd rather load up at every other position right now than I would outside of the top probably 10 running backs. Outside of the top 10 of them, I'm just kind of holding everywhere.
It's a hard time for running backs in the NFL, and it's just the sad truth. But you have to be careful. You can't, you know, go ask the guy that went and bought Michael Carter last year in this time how he feels once they drafted Brees Hall. It doesn't feel good. I remember selling Michael Carter. I felt great, but I was not the one buying him. So, it's just in the off season, you almost need to think of your dynasty team as a stock portfolio, right? I want to accumulate value on my team, and then once I need to start a lineup, I can go get my lineup. You don't have to have a starting lineup right now, and same thing after a startup draft. If you're doing your startup draft in March, you don't need to fill your lineup out. You don't need two running backs and all this stuff. You don't need that until the season starts. So let's see how it plays out. And I think that's exactly the way to do it.
Moving on to wide receivers, the big move today was the Giants were the team in the mix, signing Paris Campbell to a really friendly deal. 1 year, I'm pretty sure it's about $3 million, and then they also re-signed Darius Slayton to a 2 year deal. Everyone who knows last year in fantasy, if you had a Giants wide receiver, it was an absolute nightmare. I mean, they were the worst wide receiver core in the NFL, pretty much bar none. Other than Isaiah Hodgins was probably the one guy that was like sneaky good if you got him off the waiver wire, but everybody else was terrible. But all of a sudden, the Giants going out there and getting weapons for Daniel Jones. They signed him with that big extension. Now they re-signed Slayton, add Paris Campbell, who had by far his most productive year as a NFL player with the Colts last year, and that's with terrible QB play for the Colts. He still had over 60 catches, over 600 yards, 5 total touchdowns. Had a solid season. It finally was healthy. If he can stay healthy for the Giants, I like the signing there for him. And you add those guys into the Waller trade where they traded for Darren Waller. All of a sudden, this Giants offense is looking a lot more lethal than it was last year.
I think both of those moves for the Giants, Slayton, and a lot of sense. I think Slayton was there. He was one of those guys too, where he was sneaky productive especially in a dynasty league. I redraft Darius Slayton, whatever. Think what you will, but in a dynasty league, sometimes it's nice to have those wide receiver 4 or 5s around. If you're playing in one of those 3 wide receiver, 2 flex, you need these guys on bye weeks, and Slayton and Campbell could fill that role, but I gotta say, I think watching all these wide receivers sign with the Giants, I think we're just crossing our fingers that Darren Waller can go back and stay healthy, because that offense is going to run through him and Saquon and Daniel Jones, because these are good NFL wide receivers. They'll probably make a couple plays, but unless they add a number one through the draft, which I think is still very possible, I would not count the Giants out on adding a guy in the draft. I'm crossing my fingers for, obviously we would love JSN to fall to them. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe more realistically, Addison does fall to them, and I would love someone like that on their team. But I think if he stays healthy, Darren Waller is going to eat next year.
I agree with you. We got Real JW Sports said, "What are your thoughts about the Ravens being interested in Odell?" A ton of people have been talking about Odell. He's been rumored to about 4 or 5 different places. Obviously, the Ravens have been hurting for wide receivers for a while now. Tons of injuries on that team. What do you think about the possibility of Odell being on the Ravens?
I I love Odell, and I will start with that. I think Odell gets a lot of hate, but he is a good player when he's healthy. Injuries are something that I still tend to believe are hard to predict. Now, is Odell crossing that line because he gets hurt a lot? Maybe. But this Ravens situation is just a mess, man. And until we figure out what happens with Lamar, it's just, yes, would I be excited about Odell being a Raven if Lamar signs back? Of course. Lamar was throwing to absolutely no one last year. He was throwing to a guy that the Chiefs cut. He was throwing to players that no one wants on their team. So would Odell be awesome? Yes, but I I don't know. I don't know. I think if I have Odell, I'm holding out. I don't think I'm going and trading for Odell in any leagues. I think most people that have him just sit on him. And you're just like, come on, man, do one more thing before your career's up. I just want one last run with you, Odell.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. If you got him, I don't have him anywhere, but if you got him, you're holding him, and I'm doing nothing to acquire him. I'm just letting it ride. It's been quite a few years since he was super fantasy relevant. At this point, even if he plays, I think you're throwing a dart. Close your eyes, throwing a dart, hoping he hits a week.
Yeah.
We got another question here in the show. Cody says Darius Slayton or Curtis Samuel. Who you like?
I think I'm going Slayton, to be honest. I think the one big thing that I think makes me lean Slayton over Samuel is that I unequivocally, not to use a large word, but Dotson and McLaurin are better than Curtis Samuel. And I don't think we can clearly state that any wide receivers on the Giants are better than Darius Slayton. Now, are they equal? Sure. But are they better than him? I mean, money wise, they invested more in Slayton. They obviously wanted him back. That's, as sad as it is to say, that Slayton contract is bigger than 75% of the running back contracts that we covered, right? Slayton got more money than Foreman. Slayton got about the same amount of money as David Montgomery. Like they obviously liked him, they want him back. And Slayton has those spike weeks where I think if I'm trading for a player or I'm rostering a guy that isn't a perennial top 24 player, I want someone that at least has the chance to blow up. I'm not interested in playing the Hunter Renfros of the world on my team and being like, he got me 6 points. Like, that's super exciting. You're like, that ain't winning you anything. And that's playing to lose. That's not playing to win. So,
Yeah, for me, I'm taking Slayton over Samuel. Just exactly what you said. Perfect points. Dotson, McLaren. I like those guys better. They're going to see all the action. I just see Curtis Samuel as maybe has one or two blow up weeks and is a guy who gets a big splash play here and there, but is not going to be too fantasy relevant for me. Other signings, wide receivers, Braxton Berrios, old New York Jet, signed a 1-year deal with the Dolphins. And Trent Taylor, for those people who play in kick and punt return points leagues, deep leagues, he re-signed with the Bengals. He was one of the top punt returners in the league. Again, too many mouths to feed over there. If he was playing that slot for them, that Tyler Boyd's playing. If he was playing that and punt returning, he might be useful. Not sure outside of that you can do much with him. And Braxton Berrios, again, in another punt kick return league. Guy put up some major points last year for the Jets. It'd be interesting to see if he does that for the Dolphins. If he kicks some punt returns for the Dolphins and takes over their slot, he's a sneaky guy in like a 14, 16 team league or a league where you start 12, 13 players. He might be a sneaky guy if you're counting punt kick return yards as a flex play.
yeah, I would say, fantasy wise, awesome for Trent Taylor. That has no impact on a normal standard league where you're playing PPR or whatever. He's not really touching the ball enough. Barrios, I guess we'll see, right? Like no one really established themselves as the third wide receiver on the Dolphins last year. Now Sherfield had a couple weeks, I remember he broke that one against the Niners, right? He was the guy that on that first drive he broke that 90-yard touchdown or something and he had some speed, but I think it's so hard to bet on these other receiving weapons on the Dolphins with how they fed Waddle and Tyreek last year. I just don't know if that changes. But I think as a football player, I think Barrios is a great signing for them. I think he's a good route runner. Like you said, he's a utility guy. He can kick return, he can punt return, special teams. And all we're waiting now is for him to go to the Bills, and he'll have played on every team in that AFC East. So he's just making his way around that division.
The one tight end signing today, Robert Tanyan, was a TD specialist for the Packers. He goes to the Bears. Does that do anything for you?
I am on the side of things that no. Now, I have seen some people on Twitter being like, "Oh my God, Tanyan to the Bears, Cole Kmet he's dead now," and I just want people to remember that Robert Tonyan did absolutely nothing last year. So let's keep that in mind before we lose our mind on a team signing a backup tight end. Now, I do think it's one of those things that if you're in on Cole Kmet, this isn't going to affect your opinion. And if you're out on Cole Kmet, you're just like, I told you so. They're signing Tanyan. It's just kind of confirming your already opinion on the Cole Kmet situation. Uh, it's just a hard one. I don't really care about Tanyan. I don't want him, and I want to believe in Kmet. I think he's a great player, but it really is going to be that DJ Moore conundrum where you're just like, if they're throwing the ball 30 times a game, how much is there to go around to these players that we want to be productive? Now, if they're very efficient and they're scoring a lot of touchdowns, it's very possible. But do we truthfully believe that Justin Fields can have his rushing production, Herbert and Foreman can have their production, Komet can have his, DJ Moore can have his, and then we still haven't even mentioned Claypool, Mooney, a hypothetical rookie everyone wants the Bears to take. How many mouths can that offense feed if unless they're a top 10 offense in the NFL?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think some guys are going to hit on that Bears team. I think, like you said, I don't know that all these guys are going to hit. I think it's going to be an issue. So I think it's going to be a little hit and miss deciding on who is the guy you think is going to end up being the guy that hits and the guys that miss, and you're going to have to take a swing and take your chances.
I'm with you.
Moving on, O line Orlando Brown. He was the guy the Bears were talking about signing, and then he went to the Cincinnati Bengals. So big signing to help Joe Burrow in the Bengals offense. Another offensive lineman. They've kind of bolstered that O line that helps. That's definitely a big thing for them this offseason. As Orlando Brown was kind of the last big offensive lineman people were looking for.
Yeah, I think this signing specifically came out of nowhere for the Bengals. I don't think anyone was predicting Orlando Brown to the Bengals. Now, I love it for the Bengals. It's a big signing. He got a massive signing bonus, which, it's contract stuff. Obviously, signing bonus gets spread across every year of his contract where base salaries are different every year. They prorate the bonus kind of, but you need all that money up front. But I was I don't want to say the word impressed, but we don't see the Bengals owner specifically going out and making these massive free agent deals like this too frequently. So they haven't paid Joe Burrow yet. It's coming, but they got to go win or try to win before they pay Burrow, Higgins, Chase. Because as soon as that happens, you're not getting Orlando Browns on that roster.
Moving on to some IDP news now. A couple of things. Andrew Billings, defensive tackle. Bears added another guy, 1 year, 3.5 million. Should help the interior stopping the run. Linebacker wise, Mac Wilson re-signing with the Patriots, and the Steelers trying to remake over that terrible run defense from last year. Alondon Roberts, 2 year deal. They signed him away from Miami, and so the Steelers trying to figure out that inside linebacking core that was pretty rough last year. Miles Jack was solid but got cut. Spillane, hard-working guy that played hard, didn't make a ton of plays, and then Devin Bush, who every Steelers fan was out on, as he had just been really terrible the last couple seasons coming back from that knee injury. So now they added Cole Holcomb from Washington, and now and Alon Robertson from Miami. The question is, how many of those guys on IDP can you do? I'm probably taking Holcomb over Robertson, but I think for the Steelers, that's definitely going to hopefully shore up that inside running game that they just struggled to stop last year.
Yeah, I would say Holcomb profiles more as the guy that's going to get the tackles, and he's going to stack up those stats. Landon Roberts he's a more of a veteran guy. It doesn't mean he's not a great addition to the team, but he doesn't strike me as the kind of player that's going to have that 95% snap share that Holcomb might never leave the field. He might be the one linebacker that in the dime personnel he stays on the field. And that's kind of what you are looking for when it comes to IDP. It's not necessarily the most talented guy that always wins out in an IDP league. It's the guy that just tackles the most players. It's a stats driven sport, fantasy football, that is. And if you're tackling a lot of guys and you're on the field every play, that's how that works most of the time.
Sorry. As far as defensive backs go, Eagles making some moves today. Everybody thought that Darius Slade was probably going to be gone, and out of nowhere, they re-signed him to a monster deal today. 3 years, $42 million for Darius Slade, and then just coming across the waiver wire news, Greedy Williams also signing with the Eagles. So two nice defensive backs to add to that secondary in Philly.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised to see the Slay news come across. Now, they obviously like Slay and they wanted him, so I'm happy that it worked out in this way for Slay, I guess. I mean, obviously to sum it up for those that weren't following as closely, they released him, saving them more money than what they're now spending to sign him again, right? His cap hit was going to be larger than it is right now. And so they were somehow able to bring back Bradbury and Slay and keep both of their starting corners from the team that just went to the Super Bowl. So I think that's a great sign. In addition to that, they re-signed Fletcher Cox for one more year, which I think is a great move for them. He's a great player. They lost Hargrave, so they don't want to give up all of that defensive line depth that was really their strength, in addition to their outside linebackers and their secondary play. Now, Chauncey Gardner Johnson really remains the question. I know they want him. I've seen since we've been live, I've seen rumors that maybe the Bengals are in on Chauncey Gardner Johnson, which that would be another surprise by the Bengals going out and getting a big name. But as we covered a couple nights ago on the show, the Bengals lost multiple safeties, and Johnson would be a huge signing for them, right? They lost Von Bell and Jesse Bates. Now they have the rookie from last year who will hopefully step up, but they need another guy on that field. And Gardner Johnson just had a great year for the Eagles. So I'm curious to see how that plays out, whether it's tomorrow or in the upcoming days, to see where he lands.
Any final words from you, Sam? Well, let everybody know where they can find you, Twitter, Instagram, any of that other stuff you use on the social medias. Let them know where they can find you and give me your last thoughts of the day.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, thanks for having me on, JT. I'm super happy to be on the Dynasty Pros team now. This is obviously my first week. This is my third podcast of the week. So you can find me on Twitter at Where's Waldorf, kind of like Where's Waldo, right? But my last name is Waldorf. So you don't have to think it's too clever. But that's where you can find me. I'd love to chat with anyone. Feel free to DM me, ask me a question, tag me in a poll. I don't really care, man. We all love talking about this stuff so much. So I'm happy to spend as much time as anyone else would like to spend with me chatting about Dynasty. And I'm going to go last note. Just remember, this is the off season, right? It's fun. These free agent signings are fun. Uh, but don't overreact, right? I'm super excited that Paris Campbell got another opportunity on the Giants, but let's keep in mind that most likely he's a wide receiver 5 and it doesn't actually matter. But it's fun And that's what fantasy football is about, right? Having fun.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sam, for joining us. I appreciate it. I'm JT. You can find me on Twitter at JT Orange. You can find me in a bunch of Discords at JT Orange 4. Dynasty Pros Day 4 recap for free agency. It's been a fun one. We'll keep you up to date on things going. Make sure to check us out, like us, and subscribe on YouTube. Thanks for checking us out tonight, guys. Hope everybody has a good one. Check you later.